Hey guys, welcome back. So in the last video, we discussed how we can pass arguments to the functions in Python. So in this video, we will understand that how it is different compared to other languages, like whether it uses pass by value or pass by reference. So before going in details or definitions, let us understand that how the variable creation is different than other languages like C or C++. So when we say int num is equal to 1 in, let us see, in C or C++, so first a memory is created for an integer, and then it is named as num. So this num, and then a value is stored, that is right hand side 1, in that memory location. And when we say num is equal to 3, so for example the num is stored at memory location 42. So when we say num is equal to 3, a, a new value 3 is actually stored at the memory location 42, which is actually we change the value at the same memory location. Now let us understand the variable creation in Python. So when we say num is equal to 1, a nameless integer object with value 1 is created somewhere in memory. It is not assigned any particular name. And then the object name num is assigned to that particular object or the memory. So let us try to understand it a bit more detailed. Like if I will print the uh, ID of that particular variable like num. So let us run it and see. So you can see ID for this num is this particular. This is actually address. So now let us try to say num is equal to 3. So what will happen? So as here in C, we can see when we say num is equal to 3, it is actually changing the content of the memory location 42. Whereas what will happen here is we create a new integer object with value 3, and now that object is referred as num. So meaning by that we actually now binding num with a new object. So if we will print here that the address or the binding of that particular object, then it will print a different id, because now we have actually assigned num to a new object. So let us run and see it. So you can see here it is different. Now let us see another case where we actually try to point to the same kind of object. So what happens in Python is, like, if a particular object already exists in the current namespace or current scope, it will reuse it. So what will happen here when we say num2 is equal to 3, it will simply find that okay, 3 object 3 already exists, so simply use it. So what will happen? So this num2 will be same as this second num. So let us run and see it. So you can see here this object is referring to the same thing that is referred by this object. So now I think that is clear, like how variables are created in Python. So next, before going ahead with definitions or understanding how the arguments are passed in Python, let us understand another concept called name binding. So in Python, you can think of everything, almost everything is an object. So when a variable is created, like we say num is equal to 3, so what happens is, like, it creates this object and then binds that particular object with this name. This is known as name binding. So now you can think of something like in Python, everything actually a reference. Like it is any variable name or function name or class name is actually a reference to an object. simple if we simply put it that way. Now let us try to understand how we pass arguments in Python. So in let us first understand that what is pass by value or pass by reference in essence of C and C++ specifically. So pass by value, a copy of the argument variable is passed to the function. So means we actually pass the value of the argument, and the changes made in the passed argument doesn't affect the uh, caller, like the caller argument. Whereas when we use pass by reference, so in pass by reference, we actually pass the reference or address of the argument in the function. And when we access that, when we actually access the address or change the value at that address, so that is reflected in the caller function or caller argument or the caller variable. So that's how they differ. So simply put, when we use pass by value, the changes made in the function are not reflected in the caller, and when we use pass by reference, the changes made in the function reflects in the caller argument. So how we do it in Python, the big question is. So the answer is none of them are applicable for Python's approach of passing arguments. So that's kind of a bit setback, you know. So what we use is in Python is called as pass by object reference, and we will understand it. What does that mean? First remember two rules. First is, if object is immutable, means not modifiable, then the modified value is not available outside the function. Because, so what does that mean? So it is simply like we cannot change the content without changing the name binding. So with immutable object, we cannot do that. But if the object is mutable, meaning by it is modifiable, then modified values is available outside the function. So what does that mean? So as we know that mutable object means we can change the content. But one thing here we need to remember that if we change the binding itself and then we change the content of the new object, that will not affect in the caller, means that won't affect the called argument simply. So let us understand with an example simply. So let us say we have value 1, where 1 is equal to 1 2 3, and then well 2 is equal to 4 5 6. Let us print well 1 and id. So id is a like a inbuilt function that we can use to find the address of any particular name. So I mean the address of what a particular name is pointing to. So let us see val 1 uh, and let us say we print val 2 as well. Let us run it. So we know that 1 2 3 is at location this and 4 5 6 is at location this. Now let us create a function like immutable example, and then we call that function. Let us call that function immutable example and then say val 1 val 2, and let us print here the same thing with those arguments that are local here. So we will say first val, second val in the function, so that it will distinguish. So what it is, so we printed here 1 2 3 and its address, and here 1 2 3 address exactly same. It means we are passing the same reference here from here to here. It is simply like new name for that particular reference, like we were doing here. So we actually said num is equal to 3 and num2 is equal to 3. So it means simply we what we did is actually So it's while 1 is this, and then we said, okay, 1, 2, 3 is there, point to the same object. So first value is pointing to the same object as while 1. So you understand that? I think that's clear. Now, let us try to say first val plus, so is equal to, let us say we assign it to second value plus 1. What happens here? Now if you will try to print it again, so what will happen here is simply second val plus 1, it will evaluate it. For example, if it is 1, 2, 3, it will be, sorry, it is 4, 5, 6. So it will be like 4, 5, 7. Now what will happen? This is a new number. So as per the process, this will create a new object in the memory somewhere with value 457, and will be bound to first value. So what we did is here, we actually, this is we change the name binding itself simply. Let us run and see it. So you can see here. So here first value is this, and whereas this value is, second value is this, and the second value here in function is this. So it means simply it is now new object. That's why we say when we call with immutable object and we change in function, that is not reflected in the calling function. Now let us understand that how it is different than in C or C++. So when we call a function in C or C++, what happens is, where so it is integer, so we will simply using call by value, let us say. So a new memory for integer is created and named as first value and second value. So they are actually new memory locations. So as the compared to here, we have seen like they are kind of new names, just pointing to the same memory location. Whereas when we call it in C or C++, there will be new memory locations, and the value of the caller function will be copied there. So now you see the difference. Okay, now let us try to understand another concept, like when we pass arguments, like mutable arguments to the function, and the changes are made in function are reflected in the caller argument. So let us try to understand that. So here I have created a mutable example. So let us comment this out. Now let us try to create a list actually. So let us say lst is equal to, simply say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now let us say that let us actually print list and its ID, like what it is pointing to. Okay. So now let's see what does that mean. Oh, actually, let us start with this simple one. So it's the same like we were passing the integer in earlier example. Let us run it and see. So you can see it is the same reference simply. And now let us try to assign it to something new. Let us say this and let us print it again. Let us do it. So you can see it's still pointing to the same thing. And now, so what happens here again? So it is simply like this example where we actually said that num2 is pointing to the same object as num, because it is already there. So that's what happens in the assignment as well here. So now let us try to change this new list as it is pointing to the same object. So if I will change something like 0 is equal to 5000, what do you expect? So as it is still pointing to the same location, and we are changing, and we can change the content of that particular object. So we are doing it. So that will reflect in this particular list as well. So let us run. and see it. So we will print here before the function call, and this we will print after the function call. So let us change it, actually print after the function call. So let us run it and see it. See, and see that first of all it is changed, like 1 is changed to 5,000, what we changed here. And now see the address, it's still the same in each and every process. So now let us try to print it here again, the new list. So you will see that we have the same reference. So you see here it is the same name object that it is pointing to. So now let's try one more thing, like we actually just change the name binding. So what we will do is, let us actually create a new object. Let us say new list is equal to, let us say 1 2 3 4 5 6. Now what will happen? Just we created a new list here with the same name. So that's what I was saying. If we alter the binding, the changes made with the altered binding won't reflect to the main function or the caller function. So now if I will print it, so this new list is actually, this will create a new object with these two values, and now new list is actually pointing to this new object. That's why the changes made to this new list won't change anything to this item list that was actually referring to the caller function. So now let us run and see it. Now you see this is actually a new object created, and this is not reflected in this. So I think that should be clear by now, that how function calling or argument passing is different in Python than compared to C or C++ or even in Java. So long story short, in Python we don't use call by value or call by reference. We actually use call by object reference. So I think in this video we will stop here. And then next video we will see that what are the data types that we cannot use as a default value, and how they affect, or how they affect the outcome of the function call. So let's stop here, and bye for now. Take care. See you in the next.